During a new tell-all interview with Jamie Lynn Spears, she claimed that she was confused as to why her sister Britney Spears is at war with her. However, at the same time, she repeatedly tried to avoid conservatorship questions. Personally, it's the at war part that just really shows you how dramatic Jamie Spears is being about all of this. While promoting her new book on Good Morning America called Things I Should Have Said, Jamie said that she was happy that her sister's conservatorship had ended, but then she kept avoiding questions about how she felt about the conservatorship during those 13 years that it was still in place. Jamie claimed that when the conservatorship was first put in place, she didn't understand what was happening because she was dealing with her own issues, mainly having a baby at 17 years old. According to Jamie, the PR teams were so busy with what was happening with Britney that they just put Jamie in a cabin with no phone to avoid any paparazzi. There were a lot of contradictions though happening in this interview as well, which is not really surprising. Jamie said that she understands as little about conservatorships now as she did when it started, which is really strange because it lasted for 13 years. Then she revealed for the first time that she attempted to give Britney the resources to end her conservatorship. So how could you say that you still know nothing about it now, but then also claim that you were so well versed that you could give resources on how to end it? I mean, maybe she just means that she found a lawyer who perhaps could help her, but after 13 years, it's not hard to just do a Google search. It's not like Britney Spears was the first celebrity to ever be put into a conservatorship. From the perspective of Jamie Lynn though, she genuinely believes that she was helping Britney throughout all of this, and according to her, the help had been welcomed. She even said that Britney had asked her to make sure that her two boys were taken care of and got what they needed. A big claim that Britney had made during her court hearing was that everyone in her family, including Jamie Lynn, had profited off of her while she was in this conservatorship, with Britney later going after Jamie Lynn specifically for remixing some of her songs. In part of an Instagram caption, she wrote, "I don't like that my sister showed up at an award show and performed my songs to remixes. My so-called support system hurt me deeply. This conservatorship killed my dreams." And Jamie claims that this was nothing more than just a misunderstanding. She added that at no point did she oversee any of Britney's money. She was simply asked to take care of her boys, which she believed was a normal thing for a sibling to ask of another sibling. She also explains in her book that both of them were in the midst of their own crisis when Britney was put into a conservatorship, which broke down communication between them even more. She says in the book, "Britney was in the midst of her own crisis, and because we were isolated from each other, our communication was non-existent. My family denied my attempts to be independent and left me with no other choice than to threaten to file for emancipation with the courts. I spent days agonizing with my pending decision, but I followed my gut and instructed my new lawyer to go ahead and drop the petition. Simultaneously, my sister was experiencing her own breakdown and media speculation about her wellness, and our family already had the paparazzi swarming. Everyone involved with my saga reluctantly agreed that we needed to do what was best to avoid any more negative media attention." Tension between these two, though, began to resurface recently when fans noticed that Britney had unfollowed Jamie Lynn on Instagram, which I'm guessing is what Jamie Lynn is probably so confused about right now. And in a post that seemingly is responding to Jamie Lynn's confusion, Britney writes next to a photo of a typewriter, "Shall I start from the beginning?" Britney Spears has finally had a chance to watch the Good Morning America interview with her sister Jamie Lynn Spears, and needless to say, she was not happy about what was said. Not only that, but she is telling the world how she really feels about her little sister. In a lengthy social media post to Twitter, Britney explained that she had gotten really sick and had a very high fever. She mentioned asking her security to get her some medicine to help with the pain, but the security team just flatly said no because they were not allowed to leave the property. Even after explaining that it was an emergency, they still refused to get her medicine, so her fiance Sam actually had to go out and get it for her. After that portion of the post though, she gets right into her feelings about the interview with Jamie Lynn Spears and says, "Anyways, the two things that did bother me that my sister said was how my behavior was out of control. She was never around me much 15 years ago at that time, so why are they even talking about that unless she wants to sell a book at my expense? Really?" She then adds, "Then when the lady mentioned why did she accuse you of doing remixes of her songs, I know it may sound like a silly thing to most people, but I wrote a lot of my songs and my sister was the baby. She never had to work for anything. Everything was always given to her. If you were me, you might understand asking for 13 years for remixes to go into a small venue show and on tours. 13 years later, they assigned me as the mother of all, heart of gold. Britney's sitting there seeing a 15-minute performance of everything I have ever wanted. But see, I was always the bigger person. They all got to do it and play me, and I always sat there and took it. But see, now it's a joke. The last thing I would ever do is ask for what was just given to her. So yes, they did ruin my dreams." So a bit of a far stretch from what Jamie Lynn was saying during her interview. Jamie claimed that she had always been Britney's biggest supporter, later adding, "I love my sister. I've only ever loved and supported her and done what's right by her, and she knows that. So I don't know why we're in this position right now." Recently, she also sat down with People magazine and said that she has only ever tried to be helpful, so any notion that says the contrary is just completely ridiculous. She then goes on to say, "It was really important for me to separate myself from my family to focus on the family I've created, which is me, my husband, and my daughters. Setting those boundaries in place was really important." Jamie Lynn first announced her book back in October and explained that she started writing it shortly after her daughter had a near-fatal ATV accident in 2017. At the time, she also announced that she was planning on donating a portion of the proceeds to the nonprofit and mental health organization called This Is My Brave. However, amid public backlash surrounding Britney criticizing her sister for being complicit in her conservatorship, the nonprofit declined her donation. After that, a source told People magazine that the whole situation was very upsetting for Jamie Lynn, adding, "Jamie Lynn has suffered in her life as well, and that's what people aren't understanding. She has her own things that she's gone through. She can't help that she's Britney's little sister. Her life is only spoken about in relation to her family, even though she has also been dealing with mental health issues for the better half of her life. This just reinforces the entire trauma that her story doesn't matter." Jamie Lynn Spears is continuing this press run for her new book, but the more she speaks, the more people are calling her out for lying. Now, in her latest move, she has decided to expose some private text messages between her and Britney that she believes will clear her name. To do so, she appeared on the Call Her Daddy podcast hosted by Alex Cooper. This conversation is going to be a two-part series, but in the part one, that is where we really got to hear about this alleged text message, which apparently is also included in her book. Jamie Lynn goes on to say, "In a recent text from my sister, she stated herself, 'I know it's not your fault and I'm sorry for being so angry at you. Although I'm your big sister, I need you more than you need me and always have.'" And so far though, no one has been able to confirm that this message was in fact from Britney. Also, I don't really think that this moment on the podcast was what Jamie Lynn was hoping for. Instead, people questioned the legitimacy of the text message and called out the host Alex Cooper for giving her a platform at all. One user writes, "This whole episode was Jamie victimizing herself, woe is me, a giant pity party for her, and frankly I have no sympathy. I hope you hit her with the hard questions in part 2 because WTF. It's also funny how many things she was asked and just said, 'I don't know, I don't remember.' Okay, sure." With another adding, "Yo, Alexandra Cooper, this looks shameful. I hope you have all the facts and put the pressure on Jamie Lynn instead of playing her conservatorship PR games. We all know they had Britney's phone mirrored and could text whenever, you know, because they recorded and tracked her every move." A text message is not going to be the thing that clears her name, especially because it can be so easily faked. The real interview that people want, though, is from Britney herself. Prior to this interview, in another series of notes app messages to Jamie Lynn that Britney had shared on Twitter, she did say that she loves her unconditionally. However, she then added, "You love me, yet your loyalty is still with the people that hurt me the most. I think the thing that saddens me the most is that when this all happened to me and when I called you from that place, you would take days to respond. I never got to talk to you. You would just text me days later and I was so scared. I needed you, my family, my blood, and your support more than anything. You guys did absolutely nothing until a year ago." And these two really just need to sit down and do an interview together so that maybe the media then can stop playing sides or at least make this matter private. Because Jamie Lynn even had a response to those recent Notes app posts from Britney, and all that did was anger people even more. In an Instagram story, Jamie Lynn tags her sister and writes, "Britney, just call me. I have attempted many times to speak to you directly and handle this privately like sisters should, but you still choose to do everything on a public platform. In the meantime, please stop continuing the narrative that I haven't been there for you or that I'm making things up. I'm happy to share how many times I've reached out to you, supported you, and tried to help you. This is embarrassing and has to stop. Love you." This situation, though, is so incredibly messy. You see, Britney needs to post publicly because she's probably traumatized from never getting to speak about her situation like this ever before. However, every time that she mentions Jamie Lynn Spears, Jamie Lynn then needs to respond, otherwise she will continue to receive threats from Britney's fans. And before you get your tidy whities all up in a bunch, I'm not siding with either of them. I'm happy that Britney Spears is free, but I just wish this would all be handled privately, although it doesn't seem like that is even a possibility even more. Britney needs to speak and Jamie Lynn needs to sell her book. So round and round the story will go, and it's just going to be more of she said, she said. Jamie Lynn also needs to stop telling Britney to not share things publicly and then threaten to share things publicly. That's called gaslighting. On top of all of this, former Zoe 101 star Alexa Nicholas chimed in on the situation and said that she was surprised to see Jamie Lynn lying up a storm in her new book. Again, in another series of Notes app letters, Alexa took to her Instagram to expose Jamie Lynn. She writes, "I recently thought we were fine after she tried to use me in her Zoe 101 one-on-one music video to make herself look better after I finally came out about what happened to me while on set / being left out once again during the reunion reboot ploy. To be honest, it took her a while. I'm guessing the pressure from others made her address the issue. She then explains how she declined her offer, was happy to get an apology from her, and then forgave Jamie Lynn. She then goes on to say that she unfollowed Jamie Lynn because the Britney Spears situation was deeply saddening and once again felt like Jamie was being fake. Then she claimed that Jamie Lynn had reached out to see if she could actually send her a gift, adding, "Typical move for a bully to play the victim card / gaslight others while straight up lying. I responded to her and said, please do not send me anything and please stop contacting me." She never addressed anything that she mentioned in the book to me personally because she knows everything she is saying is a total lie, and I would have called her out on that. One-on-one, it's sad to see someone not change after all of these years. According to a new report, Britney Spears has issued a cease and desist letter to her sister Jamie Lynn over this new book called Things I Should Have Said. Britney is claiming that she will even sue her own sister if she continues to make derogatory statements about her while pushing this new book. Her lawyer Matthew Rosengard is claiming that the memoir from Jamie Lynn was ill-timed and contains several misleading or outrageous claims. That being said, Britney admitted that she has not actually read the book. Instead, she just believes that her sister is exploiting her for monetary gain. I'm guessing that's what her inner circle is telling her right now. Yet, despite not even knowing what's inside of the book, Rosengard writes in his letter, "Publicly airing false or fantastical grievances is wrong, especially when designed to sell books. It is also potentially unlawful and defamatory." He then adds, "You recently reportedly stated that the book was not about her. She takes you at your word, and we therefore demand that you cease and desist from referencing Britney derogatorily during your promotional campaign. If you fail to do so or defame her, Britney will be forced to consider and take all appropriate legal action." Britney and her sister have been basically going back and forth over social media following Jamie's recent appearance on Good Morning America to promote the new book. The book is Jamie's attempt to take control of her own narrative and share her life story. This includes her young daughter's near fatal accident in 2017, her relationship with Britney, and more importantly, how her family dynamic changed when Britney became famous. I watched the Call Her Daddy podcast with Jamie Lynn, and there were a lot of really eye-opening moments in that interview. Her father was essentially never around, yet whenever something needed to be done, he was the only one who could make the decisions. She recounts begging her mother to stand up for her, but she never did. She would just call Jamie and he would make the final decision on what the Spears family was going to do. However, when Britney started to make more money as an entertainer, Jamie Lynn claimed that Britney actually told her mom that she would buy her a house if she got a divorce, and she did just that. Except despite the divorce, Jamie still kept coming around. Now imagine being a kid and seeing your big sister bribing your mother with a house so that she'll leave your father. And even if Jamie comes back, he now has to live in a house that was paid for by his daughter. Like, the reason why he wanted to hold on to that conservatorship for so long finally makes sense. You're looking at an emasculated man who saw his own daughter break up his marriage, and then when Britney started to burn out from performing so much, he used that as a moment to take back control. This really shows you just how much money can affect that family dynamic. Now, some of the derogatory statements that Britney is probably referring to would be the parts in the book where Jamie Lynn describes Britney's past behavior as becoming both erratic, paranoid, and spiraling. In the podcast, she said that her sister started changing in 2002, and then she described an incident where Britney allegedly locked herself in a room with a knife and told Jamie Lynn that she was scared. She goes on to say, "This was a brilliant young woman who was going through a hard time, and if she couldn't stand up herself, then somebody should have. I wasn't an adult then. I couldn't, but somebody should have said, stop the presses, give this girl a minute." And in a recent post by Britney Spears, she went off again on Jamie Lynn and her mother, saying, "I flew home to Jamie Lynn on the couch watching her TV shows right after Justin and I broke up. I was a ghost there. I had worked my whole life and I didn't know how to be served by mama. Sit there and get served the chocolate milkshakes with the perfectly crushed ice with a secretly chunky sugar. Meanwhile, Jamie Lynn is 12. She indulges with the TV for hours, then goes to lay out on a raft at the pool. I'm in shock because this was never my life. Justin's family was all I knew for many years. Things were different now, and Jamie Lynn had a new Nickelodeon show. All I remember saying was, damn, how the hell does a 12-year-old land a Nickelodeon show? Well, I never got my iced chocolate drink. I mean, yeah, I'm grown up, right? But then maybe I might need a little support. It was a People magazine cover. The People show up, and as Jamie Lynn says, I was scared. F yeah. My mama was on pain medication and could barely hold a conversation in the house because her and my dad split and she was more messed up than anything. I remember her sitting on the floor in a conversation and she never got up. And I'm sorry, Jamie Lynn, I wasn't strong enough to do what should have been done. slapped you and mama right across your effing faces. Yes, because nothing fixes your problems quite like hitting a 12-year-old. That recent rebuttal from Britney may have been the turning point for some of her own supporters. One person writes, what? What exactly was she expecting a 12-year-old to do about her breakup? With another adding, your legions of superfans have misled you to believe you are never wrong. This is reckless. And she's not wrong. As I said in my last video, this all seems like miscommunication after miscommunication. What we need are these two to just sit down in person and work this all out.